The City Council LRA Board for the City of Riverbank for the Tuesday, July 27th, 2021 is now in session. To ensure the public has continued access to public meetings, this in-person and virtual hybrid meeting will be held in accordance with the Governor's Executive Order November 29, 20, as amended by November 08, 21, regarding the open meeting requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act and the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. This meeting is also held in consideration of the June 15th, 2021 reopening orders and the recent California Department of Public Health COVID guidance. For meeting participation information, refer to the last page of the agenda. For all participants, please remain muted unless speaking. Let's all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Mayor,
Yes?
can you give me a second? We're having some audio issues.
We're in standby mode.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear now? Mayor, can you do a test on your mic, please?
Testing. 1, 2.
And one more time, Mayor, please.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1.
We have it here. I'm pumping it out. Can you double check your speakers? The clerk. Oh, yeah. Were you hearing us before? Testing 1, 2, 3.
Darlene, can you hear us?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID. You have joined the meeting as an attendee and will be muted throughout the meeting.
Darlene, can you hear us now? Maricela, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Norma.
Can you hear me now? This is Darlene. I hear a lot of echo.
Me too.
Same here.
Darlene, can you hear me?
Darlene, can you hear?
We can't hear Sean.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
We could hear you, Norma, when you do testing 1, 2, 3, but we can't hear anybody else.
Mayor, can you try it again,
Darlene, can you hear us now? Darlene, shake your head, no or yes.
No, you can't hear him either.
That was better. No echoes.
Something's going on.
At this time, we're going to take a short recess. We'll come back to a roll call in about 10 to 15 minutes.
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6 to unmute. You are unmuted.
Darlene, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Maricela, can you hear me in the back office there?
I can hear you. It's not coming through very loud, but it is coming through.
Is that better, Maricela?
Yes.
The meeting is now back in session. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member District 2, Rachel Hernandez.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 3, Cal Campbell.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 4, Darlene Barber Martinez. Here. Vice Mayor Chair Luis Uribe.
Here.
Mayor Chair Richard D. O'Brien.
Here. Agenda changes. We will be pulling item 7.7 for corrections. All others will remain the same. Conflicts of interest. Any council authority member or staff who has direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Say no conflicts. Public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council LRA Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Under state law, matters presented during public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. Please refer to the last page of the agenda for making public comments if you're not in direct attendance. Do we have any public comments?
Mayor, there was no one wishing to speak online.
Did we receive any written comments?
None were received today.
All right, thank you. We move on to the consent calendar consisting of items 7.1, waive readings. Item 7.2, acceptance of the community center kitchen remodel project and authorization to file a notice of completion of the construction project completed by Maggette Construction, Inc. Item 7.3, award bid for the Topeka Street Improvement Project between 3rd and 5th Street to George Reed, Inc., and authorize the execution of future change orders. Item 7.4, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of $309,904 from the City Park System Development Fee account through a reimbursement agreement with a developer for the development of Countryside Park. Item 7.5, a resolution authorizing the approval of the annual funding agreement between the City of Riverbank and the City of Turlock, Stanislaus County Home Consortium for the Home Investment Partnership Program funds for fiscal year 2021 to 22, and authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement. Item 7.6, resolution to approve water and wastewater system development fees, credits to D.R. Horton, CA3 Inc., for the Bruin Heights subdivision. Do I have anyone wishing to pull any additional items?
This is Councilmember Darlene Barber Martinez, and I'd like to pull item 7.3 for further discussion.
All right, 7.3 will be discussed at a separate discussion. Is there any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, I bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent calendar, items 7.1, 7.2, 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6.
I'll second the motion.
A motion to approve item 7.1, 7.2, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6. And a second. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member District 2 Hernandez.
Yes.
Council Authority Member Campbell.
Yes.
Council Authority Member Barber Martinez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe.
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Returning to item 7.3, Councilmember Barbara Martinez.
Okay, so just a question I'd like to get further clarification. This 7.3 is to improve the street on Topeka and between 3rd and 5th Streets. And we all know that our fire department, our Stanislaus County Fire Department, is located on that street between 3rd and 5th. And I was just wondering, how do we plan on minimizing interruption for the fire department so they can continue their operations to get in and out?
Thank you, Councilmember Barbara Martinez. So I spoke with Kathleen Cleek, who is managing that project, and there's really two answers to it. The first is the chief, Chief Hawley with the Consolidated Fire District, has been part of the meetings. He will be part of the pre-construction meetings, and to be sure that there's no interruption in their ability to respond to calls out of that station during construction. There's a few different ways that we may choose to handle it, and it'll be sort of up to the chief. We may amend the construction schedule so they pave one half of the road, and the fire engine can leave, eastbound or westbound, depending on which way they're working. We also may work out a scenario where they stage their engines elsewhere during the portion of construction where you can't really drive over that roadway. But he's fully in support of the project and has been involved in it to this point, and will be more involved moving forward. So we think it'll be okay.
Thank you for the clarification. So anyone else have anything else to say about it, or can I make a motion to approve it? Item 7.3.
Let's wait until we have 7.7 also discussed, and then you can make the motion on the other two.
Thank you.
Does that clarify everything there, Councilmember Barbara Martinez?
Yes, thank you.
All right, City Manager, item 7.7.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've circulated to the dais, and it's available through a shared screen on Zoom that Donna has access to, a resolution that we have edited. I can read you the changes. There's really two substantive changes from what was in your packet versus what we have amended. This relates to the credits that will be issued on building permits for the first phase of Crossroads West. As Council knows, the public infrastructure projects that the developer will be responsible for are reimbursable under our program. And so what we do is we have Council adopt basically a confirmation of those credits so that when they come apply for their building permit, they don't pay the fees in addition to build the project. It's one or the other. And in this particular case, there are two credits we have identified at this time to be applied. The first is a sewer fee credit in the amount of $17,252.75 per unit, and there are 91 units. That will go towards the $2.37 million sewer upgrade on on Westgate, formerly Crawford, and the conveyance pipes associated with it. Secondly is section B1 on the resolution, which is the stormwater improvements. Typically we charge $7,100 for storm drain fees. The development agreement conceived that this is a low impact development, and therefore all of the stormwater will be treated and retained on site with regard to this project. And so the fee program essentially says that you're not obligated to pay the fee if you're managing all of your own stormwater on site. So they receive a credit in that exact same amount, meaning that it's not applicable to their building permit. So those are the two changes. The total reimbursable cost and credit is $29,592.58. That amount will not be credited in full because there are some sections of the system development fee program that are required to be paid and others they can apply credits to. It'll probably last over multiple phases of this project. Total fee credit number outside of just the per lot number is $2.692 million Excuse me, it's $2.692,924.78 to be exact in fee credits. Furthermore, we added into the resolution that the council would, if you would allow it, would authorize the city manager and assistant city manager to adjust the fee credits contained herein based on the actual realized project costs. So, as you know, the Crawford sewer upgrade project is in the process right now of being constructed, and so it may be that we come in under budget on that, and so we won't be crediting more than the actual cost of the project. And that sort of clarifies the resolution and fee credits. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Just one question, Mayor. Sean, so just to clarify, line item B1, so it's going from the 3,400 fee credit to the 7,100, is that correct?
Correct. It essentially, they're not obligated to pay it as long as they construct their own stormwater facilities.
Got it. Thank you.
Do you have a motion on 7.3 and 7.7?
I'll make a motion we approve items.
Martinez, I make a motion that we approve item 7.3 and item 7.7.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve item 7.3 on the consent calendar and item 7.7 on the consent calendar. Roll call, please.
Council Authority members Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8, public hearings. A public hearing notice for item 8.1 was published in Riverbank News on June 9th, 21, and continuous notice on this item was posted June 23rd, 2021. Public hearing notice for item 8.2 and 8.3 was published in Riverbank News on July 14th, 2021. A notification for item 8.2 was mailed on July 14th, 2021 to each property owner within 300 feet of the property project matter based on the latest equalized assessment rolls of record by the Stanislaus County Assessor. Item 8.1, LRA, a resolution continuing the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 Local Redevelopment Authority annual budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a very brief report. We're asking council allow an additional 30-day extension to the current LRA budget continuance, which will be to your last meeting in August. The reason for this is that, as council is aware, we're nearing a completion of our negotiation with Ametis, which will have significant impact on the LRA budget from an expense perspective, meaning we will be spending, I would say, at least 90% less in that budget because of many of the responsibilities that the city has as a landlord will be assumed by Ametis. And so, therefore, we hope to line up the Ametis consideration with the budget sort of on the same night so that we can have an accurate budget for the greatly reduced local redevelopment agency and also the Ametis contract up for consideration that same evening. So we're requesting an additional 30 days to the second meeting in August. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the city manager prior to me opening it up for public? Seeing none, I open this item up for public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Mayor, there is no one wishing to speak online.
Thank you. I close public comment, bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion we approve item 8.1.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Campbell to continue the annual budget for the LRA for additional 30 days. Roll call.
Council Authority members Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.2, first reading by title only, an introduction of a proposed ordinance approving a First Amendment to the development agreement by and between the City of Riverbank and MWG Holdings Group, Inc., doing business as Perfect Union.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Donna Kenny, our planning and building manager, will handle this item.
Good evening, Council. As Sean indicated, this is a development agreement with Perfect Union. It's actually an amendment to a development agreement that was signed and approved for the Riverbank Cannabis Collective. So the project location is here at 3rd Street and Stanislaus Street, 6609. Here's a quick view of their floor plan, which nothing has changed. Their elevations, just for reference. So the changes in this document concern the public benefit payment and the term of the agreement. The existing public benefit payment now is $9,000 or 6% of gross receipts, and that's at the end of the 3-year development agreement, which this company has assumed. The proposed public benefit payment would be $5,000 per month or 5% of gross receipts, whichever is greater, and this would be for the entire 3-year term. That's the other change. The 3-year term for the original document has expired, and this would be a new 3-year term. So to approve this, you need to find that it is consistent with the general plan. It's not detrimental to health, safety, general welfare of the city, orderly development, that it's consistent with the government code regulating development agreements, and contains a legal description of the property, which it does in the attachments of the development agreement. As far as being consistent with the general plan, any development agreement with the regulation of cannabis should follow the guiding principle of our general plan, which is our city should be safe and healthy for all our residents. This is not a project per sequa, so it does not have a significant effect on the environment. And the city recommends that, or staff recommends that you adopt an ordinance approving this development agreement amendment between the City of Riverbank and MWG Holdings Group, Inc., so they continue operating as a cannabis dispensary, known as Perfect Union. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. For the council, do you have any questions before we open it up for a public hearing?
This is Councilmember Barbara Martinez. I just wanted to make sure I understand that they don't have any plans to expand or to provide more services in this development agreement?
Correct.
So this is only just for changing the fee, public benefit fee?
And the 3-year term.
In the 3-year term. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Councilmember Campbell. I had a meeting with Katie, one of the managers of the business, and their whole intent is just to survive here and to advertise more so they'll get more business. They've started out slow because we know there's not a lot of traffic downtown. So I support this because I want to see them stay in business down here and keep the business open. And I think they're going to do better because they shared with me very many ideas for promoting it more. So I want to give them that chance. Thank you.
I'll make a quick comment here. So I'm in support of it also. I think we have to find ways to kind of stay competitive while at the same time kind of supporting our businesses. So I know we typically don't look at like what other cities and counties are doing, but in this instance, I think we kind of should know what nearby cities are doing. So the county's hovering around 10%. Sacramento's at 4%. So I think the 5% makes sense to me. I would like to see, though, at the end of the three, we have several ending in about 3 years. I would like to see some type of standard across the board with a little bit of flexibility based on, like, if you're in a better location, get more traffic, you're obviously going to pay more versus, like, maybe the downtown area where it's not getting as much traffic. So I would like to just see us work towards just a standard across the board policy for this. Thank you.
Donna, just a quick one. When we first authorized the collective to open, we restricted their ability to do business during the cheese and wine, and I believe that was in the ordinance. Is that still in the cheese and wine? Because we stated we would reconsider that after their initial contract.
Yes, sir. That was rescinded during one of their yearly reviews that we did.
So it must have been the original agreement that I read over the weekend.
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there any public comment?
Mayor, we do have a member of the public online who wishes to speak.
All right, for the public member, please state your name and your city of residence and your comments. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Kitty Maple, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs and Compliance for Perfect Union. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you and your city manager for taking the time to sit down with us and really hear our concerns and work with us. It's a really pleasant experience doing business in Riverbank versus some other cities that we operate in. Really business-minded attitude, and we appreciate that. As Councilmember Campbell already stated, our goal here is to actually increase our revenues, increase the traffic that's coming in by increasing our marketing budget. And hopefully what that will mean is that we're going to hit that 5% threshold, and that could actually mean more coming into the city per month once we're able to increase traffic. We're just trying to give us some leverage here so that we can make those changes, and we really appreciate you being willing to listen. I just wanted to make that clear and make myself available for any comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public input?
There is none other online wishing to speak.
Thank you. I close the public hearing. Bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion that we accept the item as so stated.
I'll second that.
Okay, go ahead.
We have a motion to approve item 8.1 by Councilmember Campbell and seconded by Councilmember Hernandez. Roll call, please.
Council Authority members Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Item 8.3, first reading by title only, and introduction of a proposed ordinance amending Title 11, Business Regulations by adding new Chapter 127, Mobile Food Vending Program, to Riverbank Municipal Code of Ordinances.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Donna is also going to handle this report. I'd just like to mention for members of the public who have noticed that we've had mobile food vendors for 18 months or more now, that that was under a pilot program that we developed, and this would make essentially that pilot program permanent. From my perspective, I think from Donna's too, it's been a very successful program and has really opened up a lot of opportunity for small businesses in the community and some really good places to eat too. So Donna, take it away.
Thank you, Sean. Let me go ahead and share my screen again here. Okay, so this is the mobile food vending ordinance. As Sean mentioned, we had a pilot program. Part of that pilot program was a temporary use permit for parking near parks. And this all came about because of a planning commission and public review of the code regulations because they wanted to see mobile food vendors. The first temporary use permit was issued for shaved ice at Silva Park on April 1st of 2019. It has been a huge success. The pilot program, these were the standards for mobile vendors for the temporary use permit. They could park along the park perimeter. There had to be a restroom nearby, one trash can, only one sign on the vehicle. The second part of the pilot program was an administrative use permit. Our first use permit on private property was issued for a taco truck located at Patterson and Palmer. That too has been a very great success. So stationary vendors, their standards, they can only be on commercial and industrial zone private properties. They cannot be in residential zones, could not have a restaurant business on that location. They had to have written permission by the business, and they all shall be closed from 11 to 7. So what this food vending ordinance does, it memorializes the components of the pilot program. The same development standards or operational standards will still apply. There's only one permit this time. There's no differentiation between a temporary use permit and an administrative use permit. We can just issue one permit no matter the location. The ordinance also provides abatement and appeal processes for violations and abuses of our ordinance. And we believe that this really supports the 5 mobile vending units which are currently permitted in doing business in the city. So we recommend that you conduct a public hearing for this first reading of the proposal to consider its approval. If it's approved, the second reading of the ordinance will be by title only on August 24th, 2021 for consideration of its adoption. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Donna. Are there any questions from the council? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open this item up for a public hearing. Are there any public comment?
There are no members of the public online wishing to speak.
Thank you. I shall close the public hearing. Bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion to approve item 8.3.
Councilmember Barbara Martinez, I second 8.3.
We have a motion to approve item 8.3 first reading by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Barbara Martinez. And before we vote, I want to thank Councilmember Barbara Martinez. You were one of the ones who initiated from the pilot program to more of a permanent status. So thank you. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Barbara Martinez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe?
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We're proceeding to workshops. Item 9.1. Progress update on the development of the city's bicycle and pedestrian master plan project recommendations and prioritization maps.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We have a consultant on the line with us this evening, as well as Kathleen Cleek, who is managing this project. This project's been in the works for some time now and has been a little more difficult to complete, I think, as a result of what had happened with COVID. But they have been moving forward. They've received a lot of feedback from the community, and they're here to present some of that information tonight. So I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. We're excited tonight to finally bring you a progress update on actually some projects that have been identified. We're getting close to the final draft, and so we wanted to share with you tonight what we've come up with. And Sean is correct. It has been difficult with the outreach, with COVID, of course. We did have our website. We did have some meetings that we were able to schedule on Zoom. And we feel we've done the best we can under the circumstances. So I'll introduce you tonight to Otto Malera. He's a senior planning associate with Alta Planning and Design, and he is been instrumental in helping us develop this for the city. So, okay, Otto, take it away.
All right, thank you, Kathleen, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen right now and begin the presentation. Okay, so yes, good evening, and thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity to share a progress update with you. You know, this has been a project that we've been working really closely with the city on for quite some time now, you know, around 18 months. And that's typically how long a bicycle and pedestrian master plan project takes, because there's a lot of steps in the process. And that's what we're going to share with you today is a little bit of what those steps are, which has led us to the recommendations that we're really excited to share with you. So what's on the agenda today is, you know, some high level things like just kind of giving everyone an update on the vision for this project, describing some of the major highlights, which we will summarize into an executive summary in the plan, and then describing a little bit more about what we did with community engagement. And, you know, everyone is right. It has been challenging, not just for us, but for really everyone, you know, anyone in the public sector working on projects that really rely so heavily on public input. So I'd like to describe a little bit about what we did to pivot, especially since this project really started gaining traction right around the time that COVID hit. So we had to make some adjustments. And then finally, I'd love to share with you the recommendations and prioritization, which is basically the top tier projects that have come from, that are stemming from this plan. These will be most likely the most competitive projects to pursue from a grant funding standpoint. And then describing the next steps. So the project vision for this project, you know, for Riverbank's first bicycle and pedestrian master plan, really relies on this statement, which is that Riverbank envisions an environment that supports people of all ages and abilities to comfortably and safely access jobs, schools, recreation, and shopping by foot or on bicycle. It's just part of daily life. And, you know, I really like this picture because it shows that the earliest, the youngest citizens, right, and the youngest residents of any city, they first begin moving, you know, throughout a city on a bicycle. You know, people, like kids walk to school also, but, you know, we really want to capture a wide spectrum of residents and people with a plan like this. So it's not a plan that just targets, you know, the recreational crowd. It targets everyone, whether you are, you know, whether you suffer from mobility issues and rely on a walker or a wheelchair, or whether you're a young child and want to bike to school or walk to school with a parent. It's intended to capture the needs and necessities of all of the above. So some of the major highlights of the work that we've done so far is that we, despite COVID-19 limitations on in-person engagements, we actually did do a pretty good job of our virtual community outreach effort. You know, we had intended on having a couple in-person meetings with the community, and that just wasn't possible. And we also just couldn't really, you know, wait. We had to adjust. So I'll describe in another slide what we did, but we basically gathered a lot of support and really engaged with a lot of folks in the community. Through our assessment of our analysis, which is basically recommending 36 miles of new bikeways. And bikeways is a term that covers a lot of different bike facilities, so I'll go over that in a bit. 74 pedestrian spot improvements are also what we're recommending. So what this basically means is there's 74 different individual projects that are tailored towards pedestrian and walking enhancement. And then 4 miles of new sidewalk improvements. So, you know, along the lines of pedestrian improvements, we've also looked at where sidewalks are missing and are critical to mobility, and we've proposed some new improvements there. We've also provided some high-level project estimates for the bikeways. With the pedestrian improvements, it's a little different. We will talk about it in the plan and have more of like a general table, but it's a lot more site-specific. So what we were able to provide with the scope that we were given is cost estimates for all these bikeways that we're proposing. And then, of course, a prioritized or a ranked list of these projects. So based on these criteria, based on safety, how well they address safety issues, how well they address crosstown connectivity, how well they connect to trails and enhance access and connectivity around schools, and also how well they allow people to get to a major destination. So based on these criteria, we ranked projects from a score of, I believe, 0 to 6. And the top ranking projects, we rose to the top, and these are projects that when the city wants to go and apply for state or federal funding, there's a lot more, they'll score higher because of this prioritization effort that we've gone through. It doesn't mean that the other projects don't matter at all. That's not really what this is about. It's really just to give a city the next steps, like the roadmap for what are the next immediate steps that they should take. So just to kind of highlight what the schedule of this project has looked like, we started around early winter or late winter 2019 with analyzing our existing conditions. Then we moved into making recommendations, which is pretty much at the tail end of where we are now, and we're sliding into drafting the draft and final plan. And throughout all of this, we have engaged with the public. We've spoken to City Council. This is our second time speaking to City Council. We've had a website and a major online presence available, and we have spoken and had more, I guess you could say, focused meetings with a citizen advisory team. So our public engagement, consisted of 2 efforts. The really meeting-oriented effort, which was really based around a citizen advisory team that we put together. We ended up inviting around, I think, over 40 citizens that the city provided us that list of citizens who are, really engaged in the community, business owners, organizational leaders, community leaders, people who've been and lived in Riverbank for a long time. And we brought them to the table, to the planning table, so to speak. And we had 2 meetings with that group, and really wanted to understand a little bit more about some of the issues that they feel the community faces in terms of biking and walking, some of the needs that they feel are important, and also understanding a little bit more about the values of the city. No one best to hear it from than actual citizens. And then, of course, this is our second and not our last time presenting at City Council. But we had to rely heavily on our online and website presence. Typically we would go out to, let's say, a farmer's market, or we would have a tent in front of a church or in front of a grocery store and communicate with people one-on-one. But of course, with COVID-19, we weren't able to do any of that. So we set up a online, it's a public online web tool, which is the image that you're seeing here on the upper right. It's a map that shows, at one point it showed it was a blank canvas. It only showed what was existing in the city. And then for the second phase, it showed what the recommendations were. But either way, the real beauty of this map was it allowed people to actually comment on the map and to leave dots and to draw lines and to get really detailed with what the information they wanted to give us. It was available both in Spanish and English. I personally translated the Spanish version. And so any comments that came in Spanish, we were able to internally translate them and, and synthesize them as well. So after this effort of really pushing people towards this website and working with the city on promoting the website and promoting the plan through flyers, through emails and newsletters, we ended up with over 1,300 page visits, over 700 users, and this resulted in 100 roughly public comments and or votes. And what votes means is that if there's a comment that somebody wrote, let's say somebody wrote a very meticulous comment on a street or a project that everyone knows about, there wouldn't really be a point necessarily in having people repeat that. So in the comment tool, we allow people to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So we count those as actual comments as well, because it's valuable to see what, if the community is, if they're in agreement with someone's comments. So, all of this led us to understand a little bit more about what was important to the community. And this is a big, really critical part of analysis. And it's what I call qualitative analysis. It's just as important as the data and the quantitative, but it tells a little bit more of a story, and it helps fill in some gaps that you just can't see from a map or from numbers or any of that. And so what we learned is that people were really interested in improving cross-town connections. We heard that the train tracks are a major barrier. And in fact, within the city of Riverbank, there's only really 2 ways to get across them. So, that was important to people. We learned that obviously Riverbank is a very family-oriented community, and people are very proud of that here. And that's why, they choose to live here. And that's why many of people have lived here for a long time. It's the family-oriented aspect of it. But because of that, they want to see more enhanced connections to schools. They want kids to be able to bike to school, or they want to be able to walk their kids to school, or at a certain age, kids will be walking themselves home. Also, there are actually some really nice trails already in Riverbank, and I know that there's plans for more. And so making connections to trails a little bit more apparent, is something that people really spoke about in their comments. And then lastly, the community is really proud of their downtown. It's a space, and so people want more access to it. And so these are the general themes that we gathered from the public, all of the public outreach that we did. So in terms of the quantitative side and what we did behind the scenes to better understand the network, this is a little bit, some insight into how we assess the network. We first looked at any upcoming developments and projects. We looked at, policies also, and regional connections as well. We spoke with SACOG, was also doing StanCog is also doing their regional plan. And so we wanted to make sure that with the recommendations that we would be making, we'd connect seamlessly with theirs. Overall, the bicycle network mileage and understanding that bicycle facilities in Riverbank are currently limited. So, in order to really allow people to move around on a bike, increasing just the number of mileage, and then understanding a little bit more about collisions and where those collisions happen between bicyclists and vehicles, or pedestrians and vehicles, or pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And seeing if we could improve, through spot improvements or through facility improvements, improve some conditions there, and and hopefully reduce the number of collisions over in the future. So now we arrive at draft recommendations. We've done all this analysis. and now we've spent time creating recommendations. We've shared these with the public. We've received feedback from the public, and we have worked with the city to understand, to basically have like a final review of these recommendations, and that's what we're presenting to you today. And so this is the proposed bicycle network map, and this shows basically the next 10 to 20 years of bicycle projects that the city could invest in, and every dotted line is a new project. And so you'll see on the legend on the right that the green dotted lines are trails, shared use paths. The yellow dotted lines are your standard bike lane. Your teal blue dotted lines are buffer bike lane, which is a bike lane that has a painted buffer between vehicle traffic and the bike lane. The pink is a sharrow or a bike route. It's just really a stenciling on the ground, no real separation with traffic. It really just tells drivers and bicycles that this is a shared space, and that bicyclists have to follow traffic rules, as they always do. And then the purple are bike boulevards. This would be a new designation in the city, and it's a bicycle facility that's becoming more and more popular. I'm also working on the Modesto Active Transportation Plan, and this is something that they are looking at investing in also. And basically what a bicycle boulevard does is it allows you to kind of calm traffic down in areas that, in residential streets or maybe collector streets. So you're not actually adding bike facilities, but you're really prioritizing that space for bicyclists by telling cars that this is a bike-friendly street. There will be some speed bumps or a number of traffic calming devices that don't control traffic, they just calm it. And so by doing that, you're really allowing bicyclists and families and users of all age groups and abilities to feel more comfortable, on a street, rather than having to use a bike lane on a major arterial. Even if it's there, some users may just not feel comfortable with. So it provides an alternative. And then lastly, the dark blue is a class 4 separated bike lane. You may have seen this on Kloss, on Kloss Road in Modesto. There's a physical barrier between the cyclists and vehicles. And it's a really great way, for cyclists to feel that safety and comfort while they're riding on the road. So this is a breakdown of the number of miles that we're proposing per bicycle facility. The class 3 bike route, there's really not much there. It's just the connection over the river. It's a really tight and narrow space, and we've proposed a new bicycle pedestrian bridge over the river, but understanding that in the meantime, something should get added to the map that allows bicyclists to cross the river. And then 8 miles of new bike lanes, as you see on the screen, 7 miles of trails, 3.5 miles of bike boulevards, 4.5 miles of buffer bike lanes, and you'll see on that picture, that's the barrier, that's the buffer between, in this case, it's actually flipped, it's between parked cars and bicycles, but you could also have it the other way around. And then the separated bike lane is over there on the bottom right, and you'll see that there's a planted barrier. That's more of a, this is a very high end, or I guess I could say, probably a high end, separated bike lane. There are more cost effective ways of doing it, adding bollards, or curb stops, any kind of separation that delineates the cyclist right of way and the vehicle right of way, makes it a class 4. So when we prioritize projects, these were really the top scoring projects based on that 0 to 6 scale. And so we pulled the 4s, the 5s, and the 1s in 6 projects. So, this isn't it's not meant to serve as let's start from the very top and work our way down. It's really just to give you an idea of what and the reason I say that is because the Patterson Road Rail Trail project, it checked every box in terms of safety, in terms of crosstown connectivity. It is clearly, a very important project. Should it happen, it would do great things for the city. But we also understand that feasibility plays a big factor in this also. And so, these are the high scoring projects in that sense, but you can really, especially with future, repaving cycles and any future development projects, you can really get creative about how you choose to basically attack this list. Oh, and then of course, we added some rough costs, including, I believe, a 30% administrative contingency budget to these projects. And so you'll see that on the right here. The most expensive one is almost 2 mile, I guess 1.78 miles of class 4. And so, clearly class 4s are more expensive, and then class 3Bs, the bike boulevards, not as expensive. Also just class 2s and class 2Bs, not as expensive as well. On the pedestrian side, we have a number of improvements there. 74 improvements is what this map is showing you, and these are the specific locations for those improvements, and those improvements basically fall along one of these categories, and they get specific, but the bread and butter of these improvements are including high visibility crosswalks, adding curb extensions at major intersections and corners, and adding rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or those flashers that help people cross the road, if they push that push button. So some other improvements that we've added, like I said, curb extensions, improved lighting, sidewalk improvements, bicycle boxes, bicycle intersection markings, and bike signals. Those are also we also did a sidewalk gap inventory, which is just a fancy way of figuring out where all the missing sidewalks are in the city. And so we looked at these, not every gap, I should say, made it on the list, because we still want to follow a methodology for how we're proposing projects. If it's going to help people get across town, if it's going to provide connections to schools, etc. So these are the sidewalk improvements that we found, and then when we prioritize those, these were the top scoring sidewalk gaps that we found. So you'll notice that it mainly consists of Patterson, Oakdale, and Atchison. So actually, I'll take that back. This list is the list of priority projects, including which come from the previous spot improvement map that I showed. So these are all the intersection-specific projects based on their ranking. So that is a summary of where we are. So the next steps are to receive input from you today on any of this. We're currently drafting the draft plan, and so any thoughts, comments, concerns, revisions that we hear from you today, we will incorporate into that draft plan. And then the plan is with the city is to present that final plan for adoption on August 24th. And so that's the end of the presentation. With that, I'd love to take any questions or comments that you may have.
I just have one thing that I wanted to just let the council know is that I have actual maps, individual maps, that I'll email to each of you along with a list of all the projects. So you can take your time and go through it because there's a lot to digest. And then you can make your comments and then return them to me, and we'll make sure that we implement all of those in our final plan.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. That was a thorough presentation. In the future, we would like to have copies in advance so we can see it a little bit more detailed. But thank you very much for the input. For the City Council, do you have any comments at this time?
I'll just make a quick comment. Otto, thank you for that presentation. If you can go back to the slide just before the draft recommendations, if we can pull that back up. Right there. Oh, passed it up. Go forward a couple. Go right there. So on that slide, right, yeah, right there. So I was trying to pull it up because it's kind of hard to see here, the yellow dots that you were describing and stuff like that. But just one recommendation for future projects like the Riverwalk one. I don't really see it connecting to that. So that's why I was trying to pull it up on the Walk Bike Riverbank website, but it's not pulling up on my end over here. So just curious, is that included in there, or is it just kind of cut out in the slide there? Right.
The Riverwalk's on the north side of the city?
Northwest.
Yeah, that was not incorporated into this plan. Right now, it's not within the city limits, so it's kind of, we just use the general plan map that we currently have. If that's something that we want to show, we can definitely add that in there.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question about the rankings and what type of things you took into consideration when you did that. And also, were there any concerns about, you referred to collision history, were there any areas that had a higher history than others?
Yeah, so I guess to answer your first question, in terms of criteria, the criteria that we use, it can be categorized, like, these are the broad categories of criteria: safety, crossing connectivity, trail connections, school enhancement, and whether it provides access to a major destination. And so within each of these criteria, we're asking ourselves different questions in an Excel table to understand, how many points does the project score within these. So with safety and collisions, really the question that we're asking ourselves is, let me pull up the collision map. So this is a sample of the collision map. Is a project focused on a collision site? And if so, does it help improve conditions there for people? So, as you see here, most of the collisions happened along Patterson and Atchison, and there's a few others down on the southern side of the city. So if any projects that we're proposing are along these lines, basically, or these right-of-ways, then they got that point, that safety point. And same thing goes for pedestrians as well. So I don't have the pedestrian map right now, but we did the same type of assessment.
This is Councilmember Barbara Martinez. This is a very comprehensive, detailed report, and I appreciate your effort in doing this. I do see that this project of the bicycle new areas is, I think it would be very much appreciated by our community. There isn't a lot of bicycle designated lanes in the city, so I think that having something that we're working towards improving, and also with the sidewalks, I just think that it's needed, and thank you for the project that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, council member.
Okay, is there any public comment?
Mayor, there is no one online wishing to speak.
All right, thank you. And we'll look forward to your report being delivered to us so we can provide individual input prior to the final presentation for consideration in August.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. 9.2, second workshop, American Rescue Plan Act.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So, as council is aware, the city of Riverbank has received its first allotment of American Rescue Plan dollars, and now is an appropriate time to start thinking about how we would like to allocate those funds. We had a previous, very brief workshop session on this before the interim guidance was released. Since that time, what you can, and more importantly, what you cannot do with the funding has become much more clear. And so Marisol is going to step you through some of the regulations. We have some really basic ideas on how we think some of the funding could be spent. This will probably be a reoccurring item as we refine the plan more. One thing I will mention is that it was discussed last meeting where we discussed this, with COVID and the Delta variant actually getting worse within the last 30 days, it may be to our advantage to take our time with the expenditure plan and make sure that we have sufficient revenue should the situation get worse in the fall, and then we can amend then. But Marisol's going to take you through the details. She's read through the entirety, all 200 pages or so of the interim guidance, and can speak to most of those issues. And then really it's open for council's general discussion on direction you'd like to go. She and I will take that direction and put it into put numbers to programs, and then bring it back to you to decide for final. So Marisol, take it away.
Okay, so the American Rescue Plan, as was introduced at a prior council meeting, was enacted on March 10th of 2021. It allocated about $1.9 trillion in total to all jurisdictions, with $19.5 billion allocated to small cities such as Riverbank, under $50,000. Our allocation of that $19.5 billion is going to be $5.95 million. We have received our first allocation. We received that on July 13th. Receiving that meant that we satisfied all of the requirements, one of which included the fact that the allocation to the city could not be more than 75% of the city's budget. Obviously, the last adopted budget by the city council was a $25 million budget. Therefore, $5.95 million was not 75% of that. We will receive a second allocation in July of 2022. During the course of the year, we will be having to make reports to the state and the Department of Treasury to ensure that we are on track to spend the funds. Now, the covered period, which is the time in which we have to both spend and encumber the funds, is starting as of March 3rd, 2021, and will end December 31st, 2024. Now, anything that's encumbered, meaning we have a contract to spend, we have until 2026 to complete the spending towards that contract. So that contract could be related to services that we have contracted for that we are going to offer, or a construction contract for an infrastructure project that we may undertake. We cannot spend the funds on pension deposits. We cannot spend the funds to reduce taxes or delay a tax increase. And we cannot use the funds as a non-federal match on federal programs. For example, if we receive a grant from any federal government agency that requires a city match, we're not able to use this funding source towards that. Now, the eligible uses, I'm going to go through these in step by step, as there is quite a few eligible uses in terms of the program types. And we want City Council to be able to consider all of these program types. Some of these we may not be able to complete or may not be applicable to an agency our size, but we want to make sure that you have a full understanding of the types of uses that these funds can go towards. First of all, any COVID-19 or negative economic impact. So any type of program or service that will continue to assist in mitigating the spread of COVID-19 is a covered cost. So for example, a vaccine program, continuing the purchase of PPE, medical expenses, or any capital investments in public facilities that will meet the pandemic's operational needs. In terms of behavioral health care, any being able to address mental health or substance abuse treatment, particularly for residents who may have lost a job or who may have been affected by the shelter in place. We can also assist with providing crisis intervention hotlines or services to promote access to these social services. We would also be able to use the funds towards payroll and benefits for public health safety staff, human services staff, and towards employees under a similar realm. Now, the only caveat in comparison to the initial coronavirus funds that we received last year is that this funding, we have to have the staff that's primarily dedicated to responding to COVID-19. With the CRF funds that we received last year, we only had, it was presumed that if they worked in public safety or public health, that we would be able to cover their salary. This year, we have to justify that that particular position or employee or public safety staff member is primarily dedicated to COVID-19 response. So that was a bit of a disappointment since last year we were able to use those coronavirus relief funds towards paying our public safety staff through our law enforcement contract. Unfortunately, this go around, unless we designate some of the staff to be primarily dedicated to COVID-19 response, I will not be able to cover their costs. And in terms of covering costs, last year's funding, we were only able to pay their salary and their health benefits. This year, they added the ability to cover all costs, including current pension costs. We would also be able to continue to assist our small businesses and those businesses that have been impacted by the closure, particularly tourism, travel, and hospitality. While we do not have a lot of tourism and travel here, or hospitality in terms of hotels, we do have some major businesses that had to close due to the pandemic, for example, our movie theater. So we would be able to assist with funding for them to implement a mitigation program, or if they were continuing to work on installing protective barriers in their locations, we would be able to assist with that as well. Rebuilding public sector capacity to pre-pandemic levels. What this means is if the city of Riverbank had to have undergone a significant number of layoffs last year in order to avoid going into a deficit spending problem, then we would be able to use these funds to rehire that staff. We would also be able to use it to replenish unemployment insurance if we were self-funded, or if we had had a significant number of employees that were drawing on unemployment, which would in turn increase our annual rate that we would pay. As I mentioned, small business support, we would be able to do another loan, grant, or in-kind assistance program. And then in terms of our hardest hit communities, we would be able to invest in socioeconomic disparities when it comes to housing, and addressing any disparities in education. In terms of COVID-19 or negative economic impact, we would also be able to assist unemployed workers, and that could be in the form of job training. And then assistance to households in terms of food assistance, rent, mortgage, or utility assistance, counseling and legal aid so that they can prevent eviction or homelessness, emergency assistance for burials, and home repairs and weatherization. As you might be aware, having your home safe from health and safety issues hopefully will keep their residents safe and healthy, and hope, be able to avoid catching COVID-19. We would also be able to invest in building stronger communities, and that would be to invest in housing and in neighborhoods. So this particularly touches on addressing homelessness issues. So this funding could be used towards services to address homelessness, being able to provide funds towards affordable housing development, and being able to provide housing vouchers or rental assistance to residents who are looking for homes or apartments or homes for rent. You would also be able to provide residential counseling to those residents. And in terms of addressing educational disparities, you would look at either new or expanding early learning services such as preschool, being able to provide assistance to high poverty schools, providing tutoring or summer programs or after school programs, and services to address social, emotional, and mental health of students. One of the second areas that we would be able to provide funding for is premium pay to eligible workers. These are employees of the jurisdiction that were designated as essential. And this doesn't necessarily mean employees of the city. This can mean employees who work within the city of Riverbank for any business that's located here. As mentioned, it can be provided directly or through grants to private employers. And it can be used to retroactively pay this premium pay to those eligible workers as far back as March of 2020. One of the other areas is a loss of revenue, and this does pertain specifically to the city. We can replace this lost revenue as a result of the pandemic. The revenue loss is any revenue that may have been earned and was not in comparison to the revenue we received in 2019. Basically, the process we would undergo in order to determine that revenue loss is we would compare projected growth in revenue to actuals collected. So if the actuals collected were less than the projected growth, then you suffered a revenue loss and you would be able to recoup that difference. Revenues in this particular case can be used for any type of government service. It can provide services or aid to citizens. It can be used towards capital projects, cybersecurity. What wouldn't be allowed is being able to use this to pay debt service that we may have, to pay any legal settlements, or to replenish our reserves or our rainy day funds. This is just a quick graphical representation of the different point in times in which we will be able to calculate this revenue loss. So not only will we be able to calculate revenue loss through December of 2020 or all of 2020, which is when the pandemic began, we would also be able to continue to calculate a revenue loss moving forward. So every December, we will calculate whether we have had any revenue loss, and that difference between the actual received and what we would have received, we would be able to recapture and basically use for any general government service. The third area, or actually one of the last areas, is water and sewer infrastructure. These investments are designed to provide a minimum level of service to our residents. The use of the funds has to be aligned with the EPA Clean Water Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And basically, you can use it towards anything related to your water and sewer infrastructure. That can be building and upgrading your facilities, your transmission lines, your distribution lines, your storage systems. In terms of wastewater, you can construct publicly owned treatment facilities. Managing and treating stormwater is also included with wastewater, and facilitating water reuse. And then finally, being able to use that towards broadband infrastructure. Building broadband infrastructure so that our residents have modern technology available. This was often a struggle for many residents throughout the country as they were all moving towards online and working from home and not having access to reliable internet. When looking at projects that are related to upgrading broadband, at a minimum, they want to see projects that will be able to deliver at least 100 megabytes per second download and 100 megabytes per second upload. And then being able to assist households to support internet access or provide classes for digital literacy are also an approved cost. Now, I want to mention that if we have any type of project that we want to do, which is within a qualified census tract, and the qualified census tract is one in which at least 50% of the households have an income of less than 60% of the area median gross income. All of those services, all of those projects are automatically presumed eligible. The city does have one qualified census tract. It's basically some of the downtown area here, the area past First Street over on High Street. Here's Cardozo Avenue. So this area all the way up to Claus Road is within a qualified census tract. So if we have a water infrastructure project, a sewer infrastructure project, a storm drain project that needs to be completed, it's going to be automatically presumed eligible. We won't have to go through any analysis as to whether it's going to serve any COVID-related impacts. It's just going to be automatically presumed eligible. And so tonight, what we hope to get from the City Council is some general feedback on the program areas that you would like us to focus on. As the city manager mentioned, what we will then go back and work on is a very specific expenditure plan with costs allocated to that, so that we can return that to City Council for approval. And this would be for the use of all $5.95 million that the city is going to be receiving. And that is the end of my presentation, and Sean and I are available for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor Sala. I do have a couple of comments before we start developing a plan. There's a lot of parallel programs that the state is providing in this expenditure of, I want to say, 120 billion. With that is going to be some duplicate programs. And with the help of Senator Eggman, we've received 2 million, which is now going to be multiplied because we have that 2 million. Everyone else is now interested in giving us more, which is always a good plan. So while there's a lot of areas I would like us to take a look at, we don't have to develop a expenditure plan as of yet. And I would take a look at what we can get through the state on the housing and then supplement that to what we need to do as we move forward. Some of the immediate needs would be cybersecurity. They're being hit hard in a lot of regions and municipalities. But the other ones would be any assistance for utilities or some of the other areas that are immediate needs of the citizens until we can come up with a detailed plan. I like our capital programs that we have planned but not yet fully developed, and that may be requiring our assistance. But again, I would like to take a look later on down the road as we have the fallout from the state, what we can get and what we can apply for under the various programs. Again, they're duplicates of what the act is, and so I'd like to give just general but not specific until we get a more complete picture on both fronts.
And Mayor, I agree. One of the through all of the presentations that I sat through regarding the rescue plan funds that the cities were going to receive, that was a very important message that was relayed to everyone, is that both the federal government and the state governments individually have provided funding towards many programs, a lot of relief programs for residents in terms of rental and mortgage and utility assistance, and also those that are coming through for infrastructure projects. So we, as you mentioned, we do want to take those into consideration to see if it is something that the city can take advantage of to be able to use these funds towards other purposes.
And we should know that much sooner than we should know that within a year where we can qualify and what we have qualified for. That way we can start in a very detailed expenditure plan.
Okay, so if we're kind of just giving out generalized feedback here, definitely agree with the mayor said. I definitely don't want to be duplicating what the state is going to be proposing. So I'll address the comment that Sean made. Maybe a reserve with the resurgence of COVID, with the Delta and now Gamma, and I think a reserve does make sense. What that number looks like, I'm not there yet, but just generalizing, I think we need to keep that in mind. Let's see, I kind of got my notes everywhere here, so. Well, I think one thing we can do to kind of address the disparities of public health is UC Davis has this nutrition program I think we can kind of look into. Me and Sean had the pleasure of sitting in a meeting with Rosalinda and maybe addressing the core issue of why so many were affected due to COVID is this great nutrition program. Maybe we can be creative with some of that spending and bring that program to the city of Riverbank. I wanted to talk about future programs but haven't been brought to council, some renewable energy programs that are long-term that are going to do a lot of good work or a lot of good things for the city that I feel are top priority, and we have a chance to use some of that funding for that. So we'll discuss that, and that would help out our mandates for wastewater. Let's see, do we have numbers? Marisol, I know you're probably crunching numbers as far as the net loss across all the eligible funds. Do we have that figure yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
So what I do want to let the city council know is that when I'm calculating revenue loss, I'm not just looking at the general fund.
Okay.
I'm looking at every single one of the city's 80 funds, excluding water, in order to calculate that. So it's a bit tedious because of the number of funds that we have, but I am working on that very first December 20th goal to see how much revenue loss we may have had.
Thank you, Maricela. As far as nonprofits, I would like to see some support for that. Their donations are down. There's a lot of nonprofits struggling just to kind of raise donations for like uniforms and stuff like that. So I think we should revisit that. Same thing for small businesses. Question for that, would we have to partner with Opportunity Stanislaus for that small business, or could we do it in-house like we did with the nonprofit one? Or is it
we might be able to do it in-house.
Yeah, okay.
I think what was easy with partnering with Opportunity Stanislaus is that they did most of the legwork.
Right.
And they also provided the staff to be able to come here to City Hall and sit down with the businesses to be able to complete the application as a whole.
Gotcha. And I agree. I do like the utility assistance program. I think there's still a lot of need, need from our residents out there. I would love to see some type of utility assistance program helping them out. And then let's see. I think that is just the last one. I think if we have a chance to kind of help the downtown, maybe like a facade program. I know that's on our current strategic planning. If there's a way we can reinvest some of that money in a facade program downtown, I'd like to see that as well. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
I'd like to make just a couple comments. First of all, I agree with everything the Vice Mayor said and also what the Mayor said, but I do really want to focus on the current COVID virus situation. We don't know how bad it's going to be, so I really want to keep that reserve because there's no telling what the government's going to give us in the future. And so we need to do all the things that we can do, but walk carefully and watch what's happening out there. And hopefully it won't get to as bad as it has in the past, and we can do some of the things that the Mayor and the Vice Mayor have spoken about at this time. Thank you.
And I'll just add quickly, because I just skipped over my notes here, full support of broadband, maybe at like city parks. How do we attract more people out to our parks? And the IT upgrades, absolutely. How do we keep our wells and servers protected? So I'd be in support of that too. Thank you.
If I can make a comment to that, I think there's some bills right now out there to help with broadband, and we need to watch those bills too.
I had a lot of the same priorities with broadband and PPE. Super short term, there's cities that are replenishing their RAD program, and also San Joaquin's going into that. I don't know if that's possible. Also, in terms of housing and homelessness, the permanent supportive housing is a good model that I've seen through nonprofits, and it'd be great to explore that for our community. And I just wrote down Latino community outreach in general. I think because our population's so big, I think it'd be worth investing in more messaging or more marketing out to them.
I'd like to comment on that last one. If you take a look at the Latino population in Riverbank and those who have been vaccinated, we're much greater percentage vaccinated in this city than any other city in the county. So we are doing extremely well with the new upcoming programs. I believe that we could be well up to the over 70% for the Latino population and not as high in some of the others. And if we ever do look at providing assistance to individuals, I like to have them vaccinated and make that a criteria, because if we, or a medical reason why they're not, because if we're not going to hold, if we're not going to hold people accountable for getting vaccinated, what's the effort for then? If we're going to reward someone not vaccinated for any assistance because they don't want to do it.
This is Councilmember Barbara Martinez. I had my notes too were some of the same items that everyone previously spoke about. So I won't rehash those all over again, but just highlight a couple that I think are important that were previously mentioned, like the rental assistance, and then the RAD card, some version that we can do, like in-house, help for the homeless, small business, and like I said, I won't rehash this, but I also think that we probably ought to connect with our school board and see how we can partner with them to offer assistance for, with the broadband and also make sure that broadband is expanded to downtown for our residents. And I think that's all I have. Like I said, I won't rehash what everyone else already stated, but thank you for the input.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to hear a lot of agreement on most of the things because that makes my job and Marisola's job a lot easier. So I think I'm hearing, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm saying it wrong, is there's probably some short-term or near-term things that we can do right away. Maybe some nonprofit assistance, some small business assistance, we're going to talk about utility billing here in a moment, but maybe utility billing assistance. Those are relatively low cost in the scope of a $5.9 million allocation. That's a pretty small amount of money. And so it's very easy for us to do. And then the majority of it, I was thinking about the mayor's statement or his favorite saying, OPM, other people's money. What I think I heard from him was, let's look for OPM before we use the OPM we already have in our bank account. So, which is a really good point because in addition to the fact that some of these are going to be kind of duplicative, there's also more flexibility in a lot of these other grant programs that are offered by the state because as you saw from Marisola's, it's really pretty restrictive. We're going to have to be very careful about how we design these projects so that when we are audited down the road by the federal government, they don't say, hey, that really wasn't a qualified expense. We'd like $1.2 million back because that'll be long spent. So we'll take the short term, return that to you quickly. I'll talk with Marisola about sort of an idea about this reserve concept and then stack every other larger scale project but beneath that. And then what council can do is we'll bring it to you in such a form so that you'll go through it line item by line item. Yes, this looks great. No, let's cut this. Let's fund this at a greater level. And then it can be flexible enough so that you can change those things around. So I think we have enough to do that, unless there's more.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this?
I do not see anybody online wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. We provided input, and I'm sure we can discuss it on August 10th and then again in future council meetings. All right, thank you all. Moving on to item 10.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank declaring its intention to annex territory to a community facility district and to authorize the levy of special taxes therein, the City of Riverbank Community Facilities District, number 2016-1, Public Services, Annexation number 1.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is actually something we would commonly have even on consent in some cases because it's a very standard sort of process that we go through. However, we haven't done one of these in some time, and we have new members on the council, new community members watching, and so we wanted to just explain how important the CFD is, what it's about, why we require new properties that are developing to join it, and what it pays for the community moving forward. So Kathleen is going to give you a short presentation on that.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of the council. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. everyone able to see the screen?
You need different
Yes.
colors.
I'm sorry, what's that, Mayor?
Go ahead, Kathleen. Thanks.
Okay, so tonight it's an intent meeting to annex territory into the city's current community facilities district, which we established in 2016. So a little bit of background is in 1978, Californians enacted Proposition 13, which limited many local public agencies' ability to finance new projects. In 1982, the Community Facilities Act authorized local governments to create CFDs for the purpose of collecting special purpose taxes and selling tax-exempt bonds to fund public improvements. So by Resolution 2016-028, the City Council established a CFD with the intent that future development with the city would annex. And we have tonight some new properties that we would like to annex in that are under development. First off, the purpose of a CFD is basically to maintain the current service levels of the city. That includes police services, parks maintenance, streets maintenance, drainage maintenance, and landscape maintenance. So back in 2016, when the special tax was assessed, we looked at the different amounts of what it would cost to maintain the services that we hold here in the city of Riverbank. So this is just a breakdown of what the cost of those services were. So the current CFD boundaries, right now we have Ward Villas, which is undeveloped at this time. We also have Countryside 1 and 2, which is already under construction. We already have some people that are living in the homes there, and then some homes that are still being constructed. Riverbank Family Apartments, which is fully developed, and Diamond Bar West, which is fully developed, and California Estates, which is fully developed. So right now we're collecting assessment taxes on the property owners within those districts. So the new proposed boundary annexation is right here. We have an area of Countryside 3, which wasn't initially annexed. We don't have a final map on that yet, but they are going to be building there very soon. And then also this area here, we have Oakdale Road, and then off of Oakdale Road, we have our Crossroads West. So this is across from our current crossroads, and all these individual parcels here are being annexed in. So the intent meeting, the resolution for intent is the first step in the process of annexing the new developments into the CFD. The resolution also establishes September 14th of this year as the public hearing date for your final consideration. Ballots will be mailed, and actually they were mailed today to the landowners within the proposed annexation and are due to the city clerk by the time of the public hearing, which is September 14th of 2021. So the next step, so City Council will hold a public hearing on the September 14th and allow any interested persons to be heard on matters related to the proposed CFD annexation. And then City Council shall then close the public hearing and adopt the resolution if they so choose, annexing the territories into the Community Facilities District. So once the annexation is completed, the property owners of the annexed parcels will then be required to pay that annual special tax, which will assist the city in maintaining the level of service that our residents desire. So CFD 2016-1, the rate and method of apportionment, was established as part of the formation of the initial district and fixed fiscal year 2016-2017 as the base year for the annual special rate. Let's see. So right now, this is what the maximum special rate for developed property is. So your detached resident, $675 per dwelling unit. Attached residential is $405.03, and then you have your mixed use and so forth. So tonight's recommendation, this is an intent meeting. It is recommended that the City Council adopt a resolution declaring its intention to annex the territory to the City of Riverbank Community Facilities District 2016-1 and to authorize the levy of a special tax therein to finance certain city services. So I'm here for any questions or comments that you might have.
Are there any comments or questions to Kathleen? Seeing none, bring it. Are there any public comments to item 10.1?
There is no one online wishing to speak, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the council for consideration.
Councilmember Barbara Martinez, I motion that we accept item 10.1.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve and a second for item 10.1. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 10.2, utility billing penalty discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the, I think, fourth time that we've had this item for the past year and a half. And so Maricela is going to, we're sort of asking the same question again. So let me have her ask that question, which is, what do we want to do with utility billing penalties?
So over the course of the past year and a half, the City Council provided relief to our residents through the waiver of penalty fees on delinquent utility billings. We have had a good response to that as residents were struggling due to loss of work or reduced work hours. And so this last March discussion that was held with the City Council, we were looking now into the future, particularly since there are a lot of avenues for utility rate assistance available to our residents. In addition, we're looking at some of the moratoriums ending in terms of being able to disconnect services for utilities. And a lot of the local utilities here in the Central Valley are going back to resuming applying penalties. So during our March 3rd discussion, our March discussion, we discussed waiving penalties through through June of 2021, and then resuming those in August of this year. So we currently have a bill that's due August 2nd, since the 31st does fall on a weekend. And if we were to resume applying penalties, those would be applied starting August 3rd. What we do want to mention to the City Council is that we would not apply that to the entire delinquent balance, particularly since we do have some residents that have accrued balances since March of 2020. We would only apply a penalty amount to the billing that's currently due. So our request tonight is just a ratification of that discussion that was held in March by the City Council regarding the resumption of the application of penalties. And then being able to provide information to our residents regarding the current opportunities for utility rate assistance, which is currently open through Stand Rent Assistance or assist.com. I'm available for any questions.
Maricela, how severe is the delinquent in Riverbank?
So as of the last report that I pulled, we currently have approximately $350,000 in delinquent billings.
But Maricela, can you qualify that a little bit? Like, take us to a time that's not COVID, and what's a normal amount of delinquency that we see, during non-pandemic?
Normally, you would see a maximum of maybe $100,000.
What is the state
Just
doing
to put
right
that
now?
in perspective, the amount is about it's 0.04% of the revenues that we will receive in the entire fiscal year.
So let's talk what the state is doing. They're extending some of their evictions and penalties right now through September or October? September?
They're looking through September 30th.
So if we waited and followed the state lead, would that have it be required to come back to council if we gave you direction, follow the state lead? Because they may extend it based on how the COVID Delta variant and beyond moves.
Yes, and so the moratorium that they currently have established is not being able to turn off water for delinquent billings, not necessarily with relation to waiving penalties. That's something that the city council and a lot of the local agencies decided to do through the pandemic, particularly since at the beginning, a lot of our residents were losing their jobs or having reduced work hours, and so they saw a loss of income. So we wanted to provide some relief to them. As I mentioned, now there's opportunities for them to receive assistance, particularly since this assistance that is being provided can retroactively pay for the outstanding utilities that are there now.
Okay, I guess I'll go first here. So if we're talking just specifically just the ability to collect penalty fees, I say we resume August 2nd unless something changes with the state or anything like that. Like it was mentioned, it's less than 0.5%, if I got that correct, less than 0.5% of our total water revenue. And the assistance is out there. So I'd like to just kind of encourage the residents that are struggling or anything like that, that there is help out there. This is just kind of giving us the ability to just resume to collect the penalty fees going forward August 2nd. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
This is Councilmember Martinez. I have a question. So you're saying that the bill that is due August 2nd, that we will be collecting penalties if you don't pay all of your bill, or if you pay it late, right?
We would apply penalties to the current amount due.
Okay, so we have not let anyone know that that's our intent, right? We're just going to, we're doing this, making this decision right now to apply the penalties, but I would like to see us inform people first before we apply the penalties.
Actually, our past two utility bills have had language stating that we would be looking to resume application of penalties in August, based on the feedback that we received from the City Council in March.
Okay, I'm just saying, I hope people realize that, and we don't get Sean does not get an abundance of phone calls stating why and what happened. So I just want us to be prepared.
Okay, I'd like to just say a few words. First of all, I know this falls under the American Rescue Plan Act, and we can substitute those funds if the need's there. As the Vice Mayor said, it is a small percentage of our revenues for it. But still, it would be good for us to maybe look at that as we go down the road using those funds. Likewise, I don't want to see anybody, especially if this gets worse and they're sick, not being able to, say, pay their utility bills and we should help them out with that, with some of that American Rescue Plan. And then just look at what the state's doing and extend it, like the mayor said, and just take it a day at a time and put it together.
I agree that we should follow the lead of the state. That way there's some consistency with localities and government.
Maricela, can you just, for clarity, if let's take just an example, hypothetical. Let's say I'm a resident and I haven't been paying my utility bill at all, and obviously I'm not getting shut off since, let's say, October of last year. I'm not getting penalized for that. I'm not getting shut off. I'm not getting late fees. If we were to reactivate penalties in August, would I receive? I don't receive back penalties for those months that I wasn't keeping up, but I will receive the percentage penalty based on the total balance of what I owe effective August 1st. How would that work?
Only on the current billing. So the current billing we have now billed for services that were in May and June.
Mm-hmm.
And so currently our minimum billing is approximately $210 every 2 months. So we would only apply penalties to that particular portion of the billing or outstanding amount. So our penalty is a 10% fee, so that would be $21. Now, if any resident made payment towards that fee, then obviously it would be a reduced amount, but anything outstanding of that current billing for May, June is what we would apply penalties to.
And that's a super important clarification, because that means that essentially what we're doing is we're almost starting everybody fresh. Even if you have a pre-existing balance, you still have to pay that off, but you're not receiving late fees and penalties for, if you didn't pay January, February of this year, for example.
Correct.
And if they're struggling, they do have the option of coming on in and showing proof that they're not employed and they can't afford it for assistance. That's still in effect, correct?
That's still in effect. So as we mentioned, currently the program that's available is through standrentassist.com. And City Council has provided some direction that they may want to see some type of utility assistance program through the use of our American Rescue Plan funds. So that would be an option as well. And now whether we filter that through our nonprofit program, our nonprofit partners, as we did with the past Coronavirus Funds Act, we can do that as well, or the city can implement something in-house.
One of the things Marisol and I have discussed is if we wanted to do it in-house, what we would do is essentially create an attestation that someone has to check and sign that basically verifies, look, I've been unable to keep up with my utility bill because of something that happened related to COVID, and therefore I need assistance, and we'd be able to use some of our Recovery Act money to balance out some of those delinquent accounts.
Okay. Without going to a vote yet, I think I'm concurring with the Vice Mayor on this, on the start date. Is there any public comments?
There are no members of the public wishing to speak at this time, Mayor.
Okay, bring it back for consideration.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. We approve item 10.2 with the effective start date of August 2nd.
I will second that. We have a first and a second on item 10.2 to commence on August 2nd.
Council Authority Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Barbara Martinez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe?
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you all. Moving on to item 10.3, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an MOU with the California Health Collaborative, secure the services of a Civic Spark Fellow to facilitate citizens' outreach and policy discussions for an environmental justice element for a future general plan update or revision.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, correct. Thank you for your clarification on that agenda item. It may not actually be a full update. It may be a technical revision, which means that we add a couple of elements that need to be changed or added. One being the newly required environmental justice element. Donna is on the line, and she's just going to share really briefly a little bit about how this opportunity came about, but in a nutshell, it's going to give us an opportunity to get a head start on our general plan technical update and environmental justice element. So I'll pass it over to you, Donna.
Good evening again. Go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So as you heard, this is a Civic Spark Fellow MOU that we're going to be talking about. Civic Spark is a national service program that's implemented by the Local Government Commission, and it's dedicated to supporting organizations and local agencies like the city in addressing community resilience issues. What type of issues? Climate change, water resource management, housing and mobility are just a few. So the California Health Collaborative had come in front of you a couple of months ago concerning a general plan amendment for tobacco use being prohibited in multifamily housing. While they did not get approval on that amendment, they were encouraged to work with the city on environmental justice issues. So the California Health Collaborative, Katie Moose in particular, wrote a grant and was awarded that grant. And the grant is for a fellow, and the fellow would be shared between Modesto and Riverbank. And the fellow would be in the valley 1 to 2 days a week at our cities. And what the fellow does is to work on outreach toward our community. The grant that Katie got needs a match of $10,000 from the city and $10,000 from Modesto. I recently applied for a REAP grant through StanCog to cover this $10,000 plus another project that we're looking at. So the tasks of the fellow would be community outreach, like I mentioned, typically surveys, charrettes, workshops, lots of research, and they would assist in the development, and that's working with the community to develop environmental justice policies for the next general plan update or revision. And so that's working with our community to pull out the policies from our people that are being affected the most. So the recommendation is to approve the proposed resolution and the MOU with the Health Collaborative to start working with this fellow. And this fellow would be working with Modesto and with Riverbank for approximately 11 months. And hopefully we'll be developing some really good policies, not only for an environmental justice element, but for the housing element and some of our other elements as well to get those ready. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Donna, this will be a distinctively Riverbank environmental justice. It will not just be a carbon copy of Modesto's, correct?
Correct. We want it to be totally Riverbank.
Right, and I know that they will drive forward to anti-tobacco agenda, which they do have, and some of the other agenda items that they do have, but we as a council can take them under consideration and make amendments as we see fit.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just like to make a quick comment. Just kind of kudos to the mayor for kind of gearing Katie Moose in this direction, and kudos to Katie Moose for just being professional about it. Taking a hit on the last one, but moving forward with us on this project. I look forward to this. This is and we were getting a pretty good deal on a plan update. So I look forward to working with Katie Moose. Thanks.
All right, is there any public comment on this?
There are no members online wishing to speak.
Thank you very much. I bring it back to the council for consideration of item 10.3.
I'll make a motion to approve item 10.3.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve 10.3 by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Campbell. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
I want to thank everyone.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for their patience. And again, to you, Donna, long night. We're going to move on to item 11, comments, starting with the staff comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple comments. First off, thank you very much to the council for being so gracious. This is our first hybrid meeting. As you probably remember, we had Zoom down to a science after a year and a half almost of doing it, and it's been a little bit more challenging to figure out how we make sure that audio gets out to Zoom land and TV land and YouTube land and also here in the chambers. And so we appreciate your patience and working with us on getting that. We'll refine it as we move forward. And I'll also mention one other thing that Norma reminded me of, which is we'll in the future on PowerPoints, the reason why it's different looking now is that typically when you saw PowerPoints on this big screen here in the chambers, prior to this, we weren't working through Zoom. And so what happens in this particular scenario is we are broadcasting this signal, which includes basically what we're seeing on the screen, and we broadcast in HD format. Unfortunately, cable does not broadcast our signal in HD. It's in standard definition. So when you see it on a TV screen, it comes out very blurry and whitewashed, very difficult to read the text. So we're going to adjust how our PowerPoints looks just for this period of time where we're going to be doing these hybrid meetings so that it's a little bit easier for you to see. We'll circulate all of the PowerPoints tonight so that you can go back and re-review them, but we'll amend that. And so apologies that it didn't look so good, especially on the transportation one, because there were very small fonts on that. But I can tell you that Councilmember Barbara Martinez could probably see it much more clearly because she's on Zoom. So it comes through a little bit more clearly for her. That's one comment. The other comments are we had a vaccination at St. Francis Church on Saturday. I believe we actually had one at our community center today during this meeting. And we're working with the county on a couple more. If we can really make a push here over the next 2 to 4 weeks as a community to try to get those who still want to get vaccinated in and get their shots, we can get to that 70% number. And if we can get there before flu season, that would sure be great for Riverbank. To those who are thinking about it, please talk to your healthcare provider and schedule it. I want to go to Mike Riddell briefly because he has an update on our sludge removal project, which finished today. So I was just going to see if we could unmute him and see if he could give us a quick update on that.
Okay, can you hear and see me?
Yep.
Okay, so as good evening, Mayor, council members. As Sean alluded to, Center Grow is demobbing as we speak, meaning they have removed all the sludge that's in both lagoons into the one storage basin where we are in the process of dewatering it, dry it out, and it'll be disposed of. So that has concluded the project that we were in jointly with Snyder Electric. So now we're going into the phase to what happens next and what's currently happening at the treatment plant. And I can tell you right now, off of the short snapshot we've already seen, nothing's changed. So we're gonna have to run the period of time that's in the tolling agreement, and then
Michael.
from there.
Yeah, Michael. I probably don't want to go into too much detail on that specific matter, more than you've already shared.
All right.
We just have the next 90 days to see what happens, and then we'll respond appropriately.
Okay.
So that's one update. The third one that I wanted to share is the mayor mentioned, while we don't have a regular meeting on the evening of August 10th, we do have a strategic planning session on the morning into the afternoon of August 10th. It's at our teen center, starts at 9 o'clock. Probably will go till 1 or 2, just depending on how long the discussion lasts. It is open to the public. It is open to comment and review. If you have ideas or wants and needs for this next strategic planning session, please contact either any of the staff here at the City of Riverbank or any of your council members to give that information to them in advance of that meeting. And then last thing is that National Night Out is next week, and if Chief is on the line, maybe he can provide a quick update.
Yes, National Night Out is next Tuesday night, August 3rd. We're looking for volunteers in neighborhoods to host block parties. If you are able to do that, please call our substation at 863-7162 or drop by and we'll get you scheduled. We plan on stopping by with the fire department, the police department, and our local leadership to visit with the community. And we hope to see you all August 30th or August 3rd. Have a good night.
And that's all we got for staff this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hernandez.
I don't have any updates. A rather selfish one, though. A year ago today, I announced my candidacy for City Council, and I'm excited to be here with you all. And, you know, a huge part of the reason why I ran is to get other people involved and interested in city government and everything that impacts us. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to represent my district.
So this is your first meeting in the chamber?
Yes.
Wow. You sure took your time to get here. Councilmember Campbell?
I've got a couple of different things to talk about just briefly. First of all, I attended a Friends of Jacob Myers Park meeting last week, and one of the big issues that Sue Fitzpatrick, our Parks Director, is having problems with is the drought is bringing more people to the park, and then they're getting upset because the park gets overcrowded and they have to close it. But they close it for safety. They close it for safety of the too many. They can't handle all the garbage per se. It's coming too strongly, and also too many people in there. They mess up the vegetation in the terrain, and so there were some incidents with that they had some of the park staff. So I'd like to just remind our public that when they do close it, they're doing it for the safety of several different things, and the drought's going to make it come more because the lakes are drying up, and that happened the last time we had a drought. We had as many as 3,000 or 4,000 people in that park, and it's not equipped for it. And so when they close it for those reasons, for safety and to preserve the park, and also because they just can't handle that many people. So keep that in mind if you have people coming from out of the region that you might know, and if they can't get in, it's sad, but we can only hold so much in that park. Next thing I want to make a comment about is I had the privilege, because we did our fireworks a little earlier with our grandkids this year, of traveling 4 hours with one of the officers on the night of the 4th of July. Wow, it was wild. Some things that I saw that I'd like to approach again. approach in with our ordinances are block parties were way too big. They were in a lot of the cul-de-sacs, and the officer I was with kept telling the people this, and they didn't do a lot about it. They were parking illegally so that fire engines couldn't get in, and there were just too many people and too much drinking going on at some of them. And, you know, I felt bad for our police officers. They were trying to do everything they could, but they just couldn't get to it fast enough because one would go off, and then they'd go over to that, and then 5 more would be around them. But were doing the best they could. And so we got to keep that in mind. And I know we need to look at the ordinances for maybe block parties and some certain other things I saw. I saw 12-foot step ladders put in the middle of the street, shooting them off of those. I got to do something about that. That's just ridiculous. So we need to do some more ordinance changes to make it a little bit better so these people understand what they can and can't do with this. And the last thing I want to mention is I went to a workforce development meeting in Modesto a few weeks ago, and they've got a lot of programs for youth and opportunities for youth. And I can't name them all, but the best thing to do is they'll have their minutes on their website here probably in the next week. If you're interested in looking at them, you might look at it because it's a good organization. They've got a lot of things going on, and it'll kind of explain itself there, and then you can get a hold of those groups that are doing certain things that you might be interested in, or no groups of kids or students or young people that need this type of work. Okay? And that's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Barbara Martinez.
I toured the host house and Naomi's house in Patterson to get a better understanding of how the homeless program is being ran there. And I'm excited about the purchase of our homeless facility that we are trying to get started. And I also want to give a big thank you to Gabby for the public service announcements regarding the fireworks. And thank you to Anthony and Parks and Rec, Norma, our city, in our city administration department, Chief Ridenour, for collaborating with Central Valley Community Resources to make the bicycle rodeo for this year a huge success. We had a lot of positive comments from the community, and I'm looking forward to planning for next year. And also thank you to the vendors that were present and the volunteers. It took an effort of, as they say, a village to put that on, but just thank you to everybody because I think everyone that attended really enjoyed the event. And thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple things. This Thursday, I'll be meeting with Dr. Boyer from Cambridge Academies alongside the mayor, just to discuss the council's vision for our transitional housing. I'll also be, as far as the strategic meeting on August 10th, I kind of want to just give appreciation to the entire staff from top down, everybody just kind of dealing with us, our vision. We're a lot to handle for the last 2 years, and I look forward to our next strategic meeting to give goals for the next 2 years. So thank you for putting up with us. And then it is a little bit early to announce the chief and I are going to partner up and do another community barbecue for residents. It's going to be August 21st. It's going to be at Castleberg Park. And we want to just kind of talk about the investments and the revitalization that's going to be coming to the park. And if the chief is still on it, he wants to talk about his part in that role. Is chief still on?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Yeah,
absolutely. So come out and see the vice mayor and I. We plan to speak with residents in the area and talk more about Castleberg Park, improved safety measures coming down the road and the revitalization of that area. And it's a great time to have a free barbecue meal provided by the Sheriff's Tactical Culinary Unit. So we hope to see you out there that day as well.
Yeah. And thank you, Chief. Thank your volunteers ahead of time, and I look forward to that event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Senator Eggman for the $2 million. She put us in a budget line item, which is not normally done. In fact, Sean has never seen a city with a line item. Councilmember Barbara Martinez had me explain to the senator and then to her chief of staff what my vision was, which she had me explain, and they bought it. And we're getting the money to move forward, and hopefully we can leverage that money with additional funding to complete the Riverbank's equivalent to the host house, and additional housing for single mother and children. Secondly, I want to reiterate our need to get above 70% vaccination rate. I appreciate Father Misael and the St. Francis for putting out the information, and hopefully we are pushing that up to the 70% or above, because I sure like it when with other cities, when there's how do you do it? And I said, well, Riverbank, we do it right. So, and they're tired of me saying that, but they keep asking me the same question. One of the things Kathleen has been doing quite astonishingly well, again, we're doing it better than a lot of the other cities, and our Measure L's, how we track it. But one of the things is the accomplishments she has done. The city of Riverbank is contributing approximately 5% of the sales tax to the county and to Measure L, but yet we're only getting 3.2%, which effectively gives us an additional 50% more that we should be receiving, but because of agreements made in 2008, that was our split. So I just want to congratulate Kathleen for the fantastic job she's doing, but don't hesitate of asking other funding sources that we can say, well, yours here, pay us through here. And I'm sure that I look forward to next August meeting, an update on the 100th committee.
Yes, Mayor. We had what are we calling it? The Centennial Planning Committee has met twice now, and it's been really fun. We actually have had a number of city employees who just not part of their city duty, not being paid to do it. They just as volunteers wanted to be involved in it. And we have a number of community members, and we have a list now of some pretty cool ideas. And so the ideas will bring you basically the concept. We're already working on a logo. Centennial logo for you all to review, a couple different ideas, so we can start getting some promotional materials and hats and shirts and things that people can be excited about, pins, of course, and that'll all come to council in a package along with what we think it's probably going to cost to pull some of this off. The good news is that the committee is made up with a lot of different segments of the communities, and a lot of them have said, you know, hey, we would be very willing to fundraise for some of these. It doesn't just need to come out of city pockets. We can, you know, put it together with volunteerism too. So we're really excited about it. So I think we're going to do 2 more meetings. I think we're going to meet twice more before we come to you at the second meeting, or the only meeting in August. But we'll have it to you then for you to review and tell us what you want to do and not do.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go into closed session. At the end of me reading the closed session, the public will have a limit of 3 minutes to comment on all the closed session items. Again, item 12.1, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property APN 062-031-005 through 007. Agency negotiator Sean Scully, property negotiator Metis, under negotiation price, term of payment, or both. Item 12.2, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property 3338 Sierra Street, Riverbank, APN 132-017-017. Agency negotiator Sean Scully, property negotiator Delbert Lyles and Gracie Lyles, under negotiation price, term of payment, or both. Item 12.3, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property 7th Street, APN 132-015-023. Agency negotiator Sean Scully, city manager. Property negotiator Edward Tolman, under negotiations price, term of payment, or both. We'll reconvene from closed session after we come out of it. At this time, we're adjourning to closed session. Am I coming back on?
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6 to unmute. You are unmuted.
Ready? We're resuming the City Council LRA Board meetings. Item 13, consisting of item 13.1, conference with real property negotiators from item 12.1. Direction has been provided to staff. Item 13.1 on item 12.1, conference with real property negotiators. Again, direction has been provided to staff. Item 13.3 consists of item 12.3, conference with real property negotiators. Again, direction has been provided to staff. Our next regular meeting on August 10th is canceled, but we'll have the follow-on Tuesday, August 24th at 6 p.m. With that, this meeting is now adjourned.